Smart 24, driving business.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for remaining with us. This is The Point, and we are still discussing national debt. Now, if you have a concern, you can visit our Twitter at Smart24TV and leave a comment, and of course, we shall be addressing that. I am still with Madam Jen Nalunga, who is the Executive Director of Siatini, and we are talking what should be done about our debt in order for us to come out of the fix we are in. Now, Madam Nalunga, we've been talking about the external and domestic debt, and recently we saw reports, of course, that we have 33 trillion domestic debt already, and about 48 trillion on the other side. Now, let's talk about domestic debt, because government, it looks like, is going in the direction of, yes, now, okay, external borrowing is bad. Now let's move to our domestic lenders here, Ugandans. What do you think is going to be the effect of this, moving into the domestic borrowing, if government does so?
I think government has already moved, like you are saying, into domestic borrowing. And they are borrowing from even outside, but they're also going into domestic borrowing. And domestic borrowing is quicker, no stringent conditionalities, so it's okay for it's easier for government to borrow on the domestic market. But again, like we pointed out, it's crowding out the private sector. Like we said, it's easier to borrow, to lend to government than to lend to individual business people. So I think this isn't really good for the country. And also the bonds, anybody can put his or her money to lend government, as through their commercial banks. But this is also again crowding out monies which would have gone into productive investments, because some people, instead of taking their money to for maybe agriculture, a project in growing coffee, they'll say, I would rather buy a government bond. So there are all those challenges, and I think they come back to weakening the economy. And if the economy is weak, that means government can't mobilize resources from the economy. That means government is going to borrow. So it's a cycle.
So let's see the cost of external and domestic debt. When we come to external debt, we have very high interest rates on these loans we are getting, and then on the domestic end, we are seeing we are affecting private sector. So how should government really balance out this? Should we have 50-50 borrowing? Should we quit borrowing altogether? What should really be done in this case?
But Anthony, I think the debate shouldn't be whether to balance external and internal, whether borrowing. It's like somebody is telling you, what do you want? To balance the headache and the malaria, or do you want more headache, or do you want more malaria? For me, I think what we should be as a country looking at is, how do we exit this debt trap? How should we get out? Because I don't know whether we can continue doing what we are doing, borrowing from here to there. So for me, I think that debate today should be, how do we exit the debt trap? I don't know how you see it, but for me, that's how I see it. But if we continue talking about which is better, should we borrow locally, should we borrow externally, should we go for Eurobonds, we are trapped into borrowing, and we are increasing that appetite for more and more borrowing, which isn't good for us, for the country, and for the future generation. So the debate is, how do we exit the debt?
Yes. Before we go into how we exit, Ms. Nalunga, when Dr. Tinji appeared before Parliament, he said that currently the debt to tax revenue is 30%. Meaning, if government is collecting 1 shilling, 30 cents are going to service debt. And some of this debt is even not dispersed. Now, how can we... Now, remember already our tax revenue is being affected by tax leakages. So many people are evading taxes. And we are seeing that new taxes are being brought out. Recently, URA introduced the digital stamp in order to track and see that people pay taxes. But we are seeing still 30% of the taxes we are going to collect are going to service debt. So how can we at least kind of trap some of the leakages we are having in the tax?
Yeah. There are tax leakages, and there are challenges around broadening the tax base. And in fact, a number of people have been complaining that instead of government broadening the tax base, they are deepening the tax base. That those people who are already paying
more taxes. So you find you have to pay rental tax at home.
Then you pay this, then you pay the local service tax, then you pay as you earn, then you pay everything.
The same person.
The same person. So there are those challenges. There are also tax leakages, either tax expenditures, tax incentives. We have seen government giving out tax holidays, 25 years tax holidays. So there are challenges around that. We have seen government signing double taxation agreements with countries like Mauritius, Netherlands. Double taxation agreement is where two governments, let me give you a live example. Uganda has a double taxation agreement with Mauritius. And the whole purpose is that if there are businesses here in Uganda, domiciled in Mauritius, they shouldn't pay
taxes.
Double
taxes.
A double tax. So this company can be able to say, I'll pay my taxes in Uganda, or I'll pay my taxes in Mauritius. Now the challenge is that most of these countries with which we have double taxation agreements, they are tax havens. They don't charge income taxes or corporation taxes. Those are what we call tax havens. And if they do, they charge very, very little. You know, so we end up, all those are all the leakages you are talking about. So there are so many leakages.
So we are being very generous, are we?
We are, but we also, I think we need to analyze these leakages and be able to see how we can be able to plug those leakages, so that we can be able to mobilize those resources so that they can be able to help us.
Yes, it's also a low domestic revenue mobilization problem, because yes, maybe those are some of the tax leakages we are having, but also the mobilization. Are there incentives for people to actually love paying taxes? Like, for example, in the US, there are things they do, and people willingly actually say, you know what, we are paying taxes, and they see that there's a need for government actually to get this money. Should we also be looking in that angle?
Yeah, they are. We have been talking about a happy taxpayer, and I think URA has tried. When you go to the airport, they will show you this is what your taxes are doing. But I think maybe URA and Ministry of Finance should do more. In fact, we are talking about ring fencing, that you ring fence certain resources. For example, you can be able to say, if we increase let me take an example. If we increase maybe taxes on these plastics, that money maybe will go for maternity beds in a certain hospital. So you link that tax to the maternity ward, to the service, you know. So maybe government should look at ways of raising awareness that people's taxes are doing some work, but also reduce on misuse of resources, because most people become really discouraged. You know, everybody is struggling to survive, but when you see your money, you know, being misused, convoys of cars, you know, people are saying, you know, that's our money, you know, and we are struggling to pay taxes. So government should also be aware of that.
Talking about that extravagance, there are recently things that are called classified expenditures or emergencies. Literally, government will not say that this is what we are going to use the money for. They will just say this is classified, and usually their security may be driven, or you know, something to do with government or state house. Should we also start tapping into these expenditures and people be transparent?
But for each, by the way, for maybe funds, for example, for state house, that isn't a classified expenditure. Government can scrutinize that, and I think Parliament has been doing that, especially when it came to supplementary budgets, and I think government should continue that. But for the classified expenditures, I think it's more complicated because it's classified like that, you know. So what more would you want to unclassify the expenditures? It becomes more difficult. But all in all, I think what's really important is government to be seen to be prudently using our resources. Not frugal.
The president told us to be frugal. I think we're in the COVID-19.
But not we are talking about our government, not the individual people. Because people were saying, you know, we have already tightened our belts. You know,
they want you to tighten further.
We have even tightened further. Let us also see some actions from government. You know, reducing all those, you know, extravagancies. You know, and I think this can also be helpful. You know, to give confidence to the citizens.
You talked about resources. I wanted to talk about the mineral resources we have in Uganda. Currently, I found out we import onions from Tanzania. And when you go to Nakasero market today, just now, there are trucks arriving from Kenya and Tanzania. They're bringing in fruits, carrots, and these are the things that we actually have in Uganda. And one of the things we're having as a problem is not utilizing our resources. And government recently also launched a project, I think in Moroto, to kind of excavate minerals and so on. Do you think also this could give us some hope of overcoming debt, utilizing what we have?
And I think that's where we need to start from. I see a marked lack of a strategy. As a well thought out strategy on how to utilize our resources, to invest in those productive sectors. I was looking at the budget here for 2023, 2022-2023. The budget for agro industrialization was 1.26 trillion. And we are talking about agriculture, we are talking about trade, we are talking about industry, we are talking about marketing. That's and this is what I was talking about. That when we are looking at debt, what we have been talking about, those are all symptoms. You know, the actual problem is how do we make ends meet? Because if the ends are not meeting, they have to meet somehow, and we are making them meet by borrowing. You know, so the issue of using our resources, what we have, our minerals, our land, being able to produce.
Our labor, we have labor externalization currently as a big problem.
That isn't a problem. That's also a symptom that we can't provide decent jobs for our children, And for me, I think exporting your children and to conditions like we see, that's also really bad, That's also a symptom of a failed economy, So all those are symptoms.
But Ms. Nalunga, also they are saying that over 900 million, I think 900 million US dollars actually, coming from remittances from abroad. Don't you think that is also contributing to
I'm not disputing the fact that we need that money coming from there. Anton, I'm asking you, with the stories you see, can you allow, you don't have a child anymore, can you allow your young brother?
You never know, I might, yes.
Can you allow your young brother to go there if there is an alternative, if our industries are working, if the economy is booming, why should we be taking our children to work, as slave labor? As slave labor, So all those are the problems, the challenges which we have to address, that we need to ensure that this economy, the economy is booming, the economy is vibrant, there are decent jobs for our children. And if we are to go out there and work, if our children are to go there and work, they should not be under the kind of environment they are working in today. Take an example of Kenya. Kenya has negotiated 90 days. You don't need a visa to go to South Africa. You see? Why? We can't negotiate with South Africa. They won't allow us to. Because our economy is so bad that if they say 90 days, everybody will jump and go. You see?
That's true.
You see? Yes. Yet, if you have worked on your economy, even the status, the way people look at you, the way other countries look at you is different. Because now the Kenyans can be able to go. 90 days you can set up a business, you can be able to have business contacts, be able to say, what, this is what I have, I can be able to send it,
Now that's not labor export, that is partnership.
Partnerships.
Yes, yeah.
You see? So what I'm saying, if we are to exit, let us look at how do we reorganize our economy, how do we ensure that we use those resources you are talking about, our minerals, be able to have a vibrant economy, and we can be able to talk about that.
Well, I would also like not to forget one other fact about we had an issue with, for example, the increase in the tax base, like you said. We want to milk the cow, we want to get as much as we can, but we can't hold it either. We use it in a way that is not responsible, and before we know it, we have lost it. How can we also get to keep the money we get? How can we get to utilize the money? Which investments can we get to make as a country?
Anthony, how do you talk about getting money when the economy is ailing? For me, that's the problem I have with people who start from domestic resource mobilization. Tax, let us broaden the tax base. Where are you going to get the money? What are you going to tax? When there are no jobs, when there are no industries, So let us start from growing the economy. Then you tax it. Then I will pay my money willingly because I have a job. How many people are jobless today? The young people. How many? So for me, what I am saying, that if we are to exit that debt, you need to feed that cow. Then you milk it. Those are the taxes, isn't it? So if you start from saying, how do we milk this cow, and you say, how to milk it, it has started fighting, let us tie the legs. so that we can be able to milk it. I don't think that cow is gonna die.
True.
Exactly.
Then the government institutions. There was something recently in the news that government bodies should merge into one. For example, you have a Ministry of Works, you have a road fund, you have so many other things that are doing exactly. You have UNRWA, and all these are taking salaries. We have over 170 MDS, ministries, departments, and agencies, security organizations, ISO, DISO, what? So many terms that we are using. Don't you think this is something we should also be talking about? The merging of...
That's one of the issues I think you raised, the burden, the administrative burden.
The administrative burden.
The expenditures, the expenditures are so high, and I think that was a good suggestion, and I think they have started on that initiative to merge, to do the mergers of these parastatals. But again, the whole issue is because it will also help not to duplicate, because these are doing the same thing, and maybe the saving can be put somewhere else. So when we are looking at also the issue of indebtedness, we need to look at how we are using our little resources we have. How do we ensure that our budget is up to purpose, that we are not extravagant, we are using our resources prudently, the institutions are strengthened, not duplicating, and that's why also when you look at the budget, our budget is now programming, agro-industrialization, meaning that add agriculture, put there industrialization and trade, which makes sense. But I think it's also important to go beyond, to implement those initiatives. Take an example when you look at the agro-industrialization program. The budget is agro-industrialization. But when you look at the ministries, when you go to parliament, the committees, it's a committee of agriculture, committee of trade, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of, the linkages. So if we say we are merging, we are going to programming, we are merging the parastatals, then let the implementation also be effective.
Yes. Well, now when you talk about, for example, merging, won't that create also a loss of jobs and people getting to complain about their pay, because some people think these are opportunities that also government is creating for young people to actually get employment?
Automatically when you merge, some people have to lose jobs. And I think that's why it's important to talk about a vibrant economy, a vibrant economy. But again, like the saying goes, when you want to make an omelette, you have to break some eggs, So that's how it is. But the whole issue is for government to be efficient. And again, that's another way of getting out of the debt trap, because we need to look at the income side and the expenditure side. If the income side is contracting, the expenditure side should also contract, isn't it?
True.
You need to rethink the expenditure. It can't be business as usual.
True. Our members of parliament, we have over 500 of them and a cabinet of over 80 ministers. Why don't we start from there? Because now that we have a huge number of MPs, we know that policies are being made, but they're not being put into place. So do we also need a smaller parliament?
Those are all proposals really which have been put on table. They are all proposals. They have been, and all the media, CSOs, people have been talking about that. And also the issue of merging some constituencies, So all these are cost-cutting measures which we need to think about, so that we can be able to ensure that the government is run efficiently but not extravagantly.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ms. Nalunga. We're going to take a quick breather. We are returning with our final segment. In this one, we want to talk about policy. as we close the show. As Siatini, what are some of the policies you think that government has actually not yet put in place that could actually influence our debt management and also help us come out of the debt trap, like you have called it? Ladies and gentlemen, we are still talking the Uganda national debt, currently standing at close to 80 trillion, arguably more than that, but we are talking solutions now, and we are talking policies that can be put in place for us to come out of the debt trap. We are taking a quick breather, return with our final segment, and stay with us. We'll be right back.